Derivatives trading involves substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results.
Good morning, everyone. It is Friday, May 10th, 2024. My name is John Pieranunzi. This is the opening swing. Let's begin today, as we always do, with a discussion of our news. I'll begin by mentioning that Europe is higher. We have the FTSE and the DAX are making all-time highs. There's also some expectations out of UBS for the BOE, Bank of England, to potentially cut in June rather than August. That was fairly dovish. Also, we had Janet Yellen, Treasury Secretary, mentioning that inflation had come down substantially, but not quite where it needs to be. So overall, fairly dovish comments out of decision makers, and we're seeing the result. We're seeing higher prices. So what happened overnight? Pretty busy in Europe. We had a lot of numbers out of England. Their GDP came in better. Some additional numbers out of England. A lot of central bankers speaking as well. That's continuing through the day. That's really mostly what we're getting today is central bankers speaking. We have out of the US, we have Goolsbee, Bowman, Logan, Kashkari, and Barr all speaking today. And the data out of the US is very light. We have consumer sentiment at 10. That's pretty much it. And then just Fed speak. So that's what we have in terms of the calendar today. Let's take a look at some charts here. We'll begin with a quick look at our monthly chart. Get it here. And so the only reason that we're looking at this chart today, the only reason I am, is just to kind of follow our storyline that we had where it was looking like, well, we have an inside month so far with a news low. This chart I mentioned is in balance. We're within the prior month. However, opening this week at the midline of April and now, getting the excursion higher and trading up to the upper quartile of the April range, which I mentioned was the 41s. That's pretty strong. So I would definitely refer to this as balance with a pretty strong upward skew. If we're holding above the 41s, even above the 5150s, we're still looking at balance with a skew for higher prices. Let's look at our weekly. The weekly is a little bit more aggressively bullish, whereas we've talked about all week, we're above the prior week's settlement end range, and we've just been getting higher prices and seeing this candle just continue higher. Our big price initially was the 13 quarters. We took those out. Then yesterday we were looking for the 36s. We got those yesterday late in the day. 41s were next, got those overnight, and we're actually we've crested the 50s as well. So still remaining very bullish on this weekly time frame, and the next target for me is the 71 to 75 region, which we will go over. Let's see if we can find our daily chart here. Here's our daily. So the key to look at on the daily for me is, this is our week. Monday, we had an impulse higher through the prior week's range. Tuesday continued, and then Wednesday we got a pretty solid pullback. This was a pretty good pullback that was refuted by the buyers back up for another impulse higher that was able to continue. So I'll mention here that a lot of times on a Friday, after we've had a very strong directional week, a lot of times on Friday, I'll come in expecting some reversion. Like if we're, 4 days in a row that are very strong, sometimes my primary expectation will be reversion, or, I'm not so much expecting that today, primarily because we did get a pretty good shot. Like the sellers on Wednesday, they tried pretty good. That was a pretty good try, and it was soundly refuted. So for me, I'm not expecting the kind of reversion that I could otherwise expect on a day like this, because to me, this Wednesday did signify a pretty good shot by the sellers, and it was just very soundly refuted, and we're trading at higher prices today. Again, settlement will be very important. We're looking to open in a gap for the RTH session. So the settlement price will be very important. It's 39s, which is in between that 36 to 41 region that I mentioned. Very important for me. Holding prices above there, the target that I'll be looking for, aside from the full session high, as I mentioned, will be the 71 to 75 region. That's my big target above. Continuing higher, we have the 85s, which is this test. If you look at what happened here, I had mentioned this area was a strong push for sellers that I was expecting resistance in. We got it a little bit there, but like I said, refuted. So now we're above this area. So I'm looking at this push lower now. This push. That's where that's part of where the 71 to 75 region comes from. This is a very strong push by the sellers that got a test higher, which became our all-time highs. But then once we lost this low right here, you can see that we just were unable then to retest, and range expanded lower quite a bit. So until it's refuted, I will expect this area to be resisted. Not to say that we're not going to make progress into it, but I would expect resistance to be here as of now until proven otherwise, which could easily happen. But anyway, so that's what we're looking for with excursion higher. We're looking to take the 71 to 75s, potentially 85s. If we get below these 39s, then the 26s become important. We'll go over that on the smaller time frame charts. Let's do that now. This is a 4x5 PNF chart, and I'm looking at it just to see the price action over the course of the week. So what do we see? Our prior weekly high is way down here at the bottom of the screen. And of course, Monday we had the strong move higher. Tuesday continued. By the way, the blue lines are the week, and the pink lines are each day. So we have Monday, impulse higher. Tuesday continues. Wednesday tried the pullback, which was refuted. And since Wednesday, we've made higher lows and just kind of just no supply, nothing for sale down here, and we've just continued. So the key is impulse, pullback, continuation. And this area right here, as I mentioned, is very key for me. The 36 to 41s, I have marked 33.5 to 45, because that is where on the close, the auction just, we had our close and it was just unfinished. There's just nothing for sale in this area. When you see something like this, it's just not enough for sale. And we're just searching higher prices to find S&P contracts for sale. That's what's going on here. So this area is going to be my initial line of defense. If we're holding this area, testing into it, quickly rejecting, and really holding this 33.5 low, then I'm looking for highs to be taken out. If we fall into this area, then it could get a little bit more messy. If we get back into our prior balance, a test of our prior balance area, which is what would happen below the 26s, I would still expect support. So that's what I'd see. That's what I'm seeing right now. Not to say we couldn't fall into this area and continue lower, but we'll go over that on a lower time frame chart. The key here is impulse, balance, continuation. All right, here we are on the 2x4 PNF, which is essentially just an 8 box. Let's discuss some potential price movement. And because I have a bullish skew to today, a tentative bullish skew, let's discuss bullish ideas first. Bullish ideas. So as I've said, this area is pretty much my LIS from here or this is an area that I expect initial support. RTH high is very important, and these 33s where this is really these like lows here. This to me looks like a pretty active buyer. The way that we closed here, someone had more to buy on the close, and they forced these prices higher. So something like that, what I'm thinking is as long as we hold this area, the bull bias is going to be is going to remain very strong. That's what I'm thinking. Could be wrong. But if that is the case, then what I'd be looking at, okay, so first the most bullish idea would be if we just hold the overnight low. And again, I would look at that to happen in a similar way that I always kind of do, which would be some kind of a test, potentially lower into those FS levels that gets refuted. If we do not close the gap, then of course we're looking for the overnight high. If we can't close the gap, we're looking for the overnight high. And that would be the first and most obvious, the easiest trade would be a test lower that doesn't close the gap, tests below FS levels, but reverts higher, takes the overnight high. That'd be the first and easiest trade right there. Then if we're able to hold these prices, then we're looking for the 69 to 75 region I mentioned, which is our CPI SOC. And from there, we could kind of see like this type of action, grinding action that kind of maybe holds DGPs, but just kind of grinds higher to our 75s. That would be a pretty easy trade if we got that today. You know, if we got a nice easy test lower, takes the overnight high, and we just know that we want to trade bullishly for the targets that we're looking at, 75s, potentially 85s. I don't know if we go that far today, but this would be the most bullish idea for me. Another way that could happen, of course, that we have to flag, and this easily could happen when the cat's kind of out of the bag, is if we just hold FS levels and we just see one of these, where it just kind of rounds up, and then here we go, take out the FS high, continue higher. So those are kind of two ways that could happen. However, so what I'll flag is it's very possible for us to see something like that, but what we want to watch out for is a high, then gets somewhat of a deeper pullback, and then cannot retest that high. If we see that, then it's like our foot got to come off the gas, and we may see this start to sort of trend lower. I'm flagging that if we see something like this, like a test, and then another test that doesn't get there, there becomes a much better chance that we could just kind of trend lower in kind of a grinding way for the remainder of the day. So be aware of that. We get something like this. It could all, of course, revert higher, but that's what I would caution you. If we get up into this area and it doesn't kind of have the same sort of juice, we can't continue to get those highs, we could get this test and just kind of flag around this area, and that's how we could close it. So be aware of that. Let's look at a couple other ideas. What happens if we just get really, really bearish initially? So if we get bearish today, based on this, I think we would still get some type of test higher that would relieve this pressure, but it might not get to the 75s. It could be one of these things pulls back, and then we get the like high, higher high, but then we don't get this high, and then we fall back. Then if we get into the prior settle region, this whole area, like I said, if we're holding 33 halves, as long as we're holding 33 halves, to me, this is going to be subject to a impulse higher and a continuation, as long as we're holding 33 halves. It might get really sketchy in here. It might get really bouncy like it did over here, but we still held higher lows and we're able to continue. So if we get that test, get a nice push higher and then start to hold higher lows, I would still consider the bullish possibility. However, if we fall below these 33s, like we get into this area, try to recover FS levels, we cannot. We're into the prior range, and 33s get broken. 33s get broken, and we cannot get back above the prior high, then I would be looking for the 26s to trade. We have yesterday's VPOC right here around 30s. That's the first target below these 33s. And then falling back below, we're looking for 26s and likely 17s on anything like on a push lower. That's 20 or yeah, below 33s. Then we're looking for the VPOC, which is 30, and then we're looking for 17s, which are right here. Again, all of these pushes to me would be subject to an impulse higher that could resume the bullish behavior. And what we want to be careful of is if we see a series of lower highs. We want to be very careful with trading long against lower highs. Unless we see the high, let me do this. So what I'm saying is if we get something like this that just trends lower into these prices, it's going to look like a long setup, and it could be. However, if we don't get a push that takes out the prior high, and if the prior low gets taken out, then it's a downtrend, something like this. What we want to see is we want to see a push higher that takes out a prior high, pulls back, holds a prior low, and continues. That's what we want to see to trade the long. If we don't get that, however, then we're going to be looking for just a grinding trend lower. And I think if we do trend lower today, it will be one of those grinds that just keeps looking like it should break higher. And it might, because like I said, I'm looking for support in this region. If we fall below, then I'll expect the 26s to be touched. If the 26s are not support, then I would expect this area to continue to be supported as well and be subject to extension. Just for completion, let's cover what happens if I'm totally wrong on all of that and we fall beneath this area, what that might look like. I'm not necessarily expecting it, but it's certainly possible. If we get something like this, test higher, falls lower, doesn't get anything, doesn't get, or maybe takes the all-time or the overnight high, but can't continue, and then we fall into this area and keep making lower highs, then I would expect like the impulse to kind of pick up. If sellers are really in here, I would expect it to really pick up once we lose 33s and get pretty deep into this range. If we then fall pretty deeply into this range, back into our magnet zone, and then we can't get above the 26s and we know settlement is not a possibility, then I would be open below this area for the selling to increase. It would have to happen for me below this 13 area, or see this 13 area really get pressured. And then if we see that, we might see like a little bit more of a release lower. But it would have to, for me, it would have to be in this area. This is where I would expect a lot of the late buyers to give up, and this is where it could start to unwind more. If we do start to really unwind, then we're looking for this area, 92 to 99s. Again, I would expect support ahead of this area because the 5200s became an LIS. It's sort of our balance low, so I would expect support ahead of this area. If we breach this area, then again, refer to plans from yesterday. We'll be looking for the 5183s, and a lot of the targets from yesterday will be valid. So that's all I'll say because we're going a little bit long today. Yesterday's plans for a break of this area still remain valid. And really, because the environment hasn't changed, a lot of the plans are staying the same. We're expecting continuation higher, and on initial pushes lower, we're looking for support. However, we have this area, which is our 13s to 26s, which is kind of where that ends. If we get below this, then we're starting to consider targets lower because we'll be below our prior settle. So that's what I'm looking for today. Again, I'm going long. Hopefully I'm not like over explaining. I'm not sure. Feel free to let me know because if I am going to continue on to add crude, I would have to really tighten this down. I'm entirely too long again today, but I'm trying to share my thoughts as much as I can because this is my game plan for what I do every day. And hopefully it's helpful to some of you out there. Maybe it just shows you the way I'm thinking. But anyway, I'm gonna wrap it because I'm way long. But anyway, so I hope that everyone can have a great day today. I hope you're having a great day in progress. I hope you can improve your trading in some way today, in any small way. Maybe that just means having more discipline to not trade if it's not your environment. And of course, I hope you can make someone else smile today because that's the real key. So let's end it. get out there, clock some ticks. Everyone have a great day. I'll see you on Monday.